My toxic family hated my small wedding, so they planned a huge one behind my back. I cut them off and they ambushed me. Now I'm pregnant and they're trying to force their way back in. I, 28 female, grew up as the youngest of 3 sisters in a family that looked perfect from the outside, but was far from it behind closed doors. My oldest sister Anna, 34 female, was always the golden child, beautiful, smart, and successful. She breezed through school with straight A's, was homecoming queen, and went on to become a lawyer at a prestigious firm. My middle sister Olivia, 31 female, was the rebellious one, but still managed to win our parents' approval with her outgoing personality and artistic talents. Then there was me, average looking, decent grades, but nothing special according to my parents. From my earliest memories, I felt like an outsider in my own family. While my sisters got showered with praise and attention, I was often overlooked or criticized. I remember when I was about 7, I drew a picture of our family to give to my mom for Mother's Day. I was so proud of it and couldn't wait to see her reaction. But when I presented it to her, she just frowned and said, "Oh Emma, why did you make yourself so much bigger than everyone else? That's not very realistic." I was crushed and tore up the drawing later that night. As we got older, the favoritism became even more apparent. For Anna's 16th birthday, our parents threw her a huge party and bought her a brand new car. For Olivia's 16th, they took her and her friends on a weekend trip to New York City. When my 16th birthday rolled around, I got a used bike and a cake from the grocery store. I tried not to let it bother me, but it was hard not to feel like I mattered less than my sisters. The double standards extended to discipline too. When Olivia got caught shoplifting makeup at 15, my parents hired a lawyer and got the charges dropped. They chalked it up to teenage rebellion and barely punished her. But when I got caught with a beer at a party at 17, I was grounded for 2 months and they threatened to not let me go to prom. It seemed like I could never do anything right in their eyes. As I entered my teenage years, the emotional neglect turned into more overt criticism and put-downs. My mom constantly made comments about my appearance, telling me I needed to lose weight or that my clothes were unflattering. She'd take me shopping and only pick out clothes for my sisters, leaving me to fend for myself. My dad wasn't as openly cruel, but he'd make jokes about how I'd probably end up working at a fast food joint since I wasn't as smart as Anna. At family gatherings, relatives would fawn over my sister's accomplishments while barely acknowledging my existence. I tried so hard to win their approval, but nothing ever seemed to be enough. I joined every club and sport I could, desperate for some area where I could excel. But even when I did well, like placing at a regional debate competition, my parents found a way to diminish it. "Second place is just the first loser," my dad said when I proudly showed him my trophy. I started to believe that maybe I really was inferior and unworthy of love. My self-esteem plummeted and I withdrew into myself, avoiding social situations out of fear of rejection. There was one bright spot during those difficult years: my grandmother. She lived a few hours away, so we only saw her a few times a year, but she always made me feel special and loved. She'd listen to me for hours, praising my creativity and encouraging me to pursue my passions. When she passed away during my senior year of high school, I was devastated. I felt like I'd lost the only person who truly saw and appreciated me for who I was. After high school, I made the difficult decision to move across the country for college. I knew I needed to get away from the toxic family dynamic if I ever wanted to heal and grow as a person. It was terrifying at first being on my own in a new city where I didn't know anyone. But slowly, I started to come out of my shell. I made friends who appreciated me for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. I discovered passions and talents I never knew I had, like a knack for graphic design. For the first time, I felt like I could just be myself without constant judgment and comparison. I limited contact with my family to occasional phone calls and brief visits during holidays. Whenever we did talk, it was clear nothing had changed. They still compared me to my sisters, made backhanded compliments, and generally made me feel small. But I was building a life for myself and finally starting to heal from years of emotional abuse. I threw myself into my studies and internships, determined to prove to myself that I was capable and worthy. After graduation, I landed a job at a small marketing firm in the city. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved the creative work and the supportive team environment. For the first time, I felt valued and respected for my contributions. I made close friends, joined a recreational soccer league, and even started dating a bit. Life wasn't perfect, but I was happier than I'd ever been. Fast forward to 3 years ago, I met James, 30 male, through mutual friends at a Halloween party. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love of terrible sci-fi movies and spicy food. He was kind, funny, and made me feel completely at ease. As we started dating, I was amazed by how supportive and encouraging he was. He celebrated my successes, comforted me through setbacks, and never made me feel less than. For the first time, I understood what a healthy, loving relationship looked like. When James proposed 6 months ago, I was overjoyed. But I also felt a sense of dread about involving my family in the wedding. I knew they would find ways to criticize and try to take over. But I felt obligated to at least tell them and invite them to be part of the process. I called to share the news of our engagement, bracing myself for their reaction. My mom's first response was, "Oh, I'm surprised someone wanted to marry you," followed by an awkward laugh like it was just a joke. My dad grunted and asked about James' job and salary before offering a half-hearted congratulations. Anna immediately launched into a story about how much bigger and more expensive her own engagement ring was. Olivia at least seemed genuinely happy for me, but quickly changed the subject to her own relationship drama. We invited them to our engagement party, hoping that meeting James and seeing us together would soften their attitudes. But they spent most of the night ignoring us, instead fawning over Anna, who had recently made partner at her law firm. My mom cornered me at one point to criticize my outfit and suggest I wear more makeup to hide those circles under your eyes. I left the party feeling deflated and questioning whether involving them in the wedding was a mistake. As we started wedding planning, the snide remarks and attempts to take over ramped up. My mom criticized every decision I made. The venue wasn't fancy enough, my dress was unflattering, the guest list was too small. She kept trying to commandeer the planning, insisting we needed to invite distant relatives I barely knew and pushing for extravagant details we didn't want or need. When I put my foot down, she guilt-tripped me about how I was tearing the family apart and ruining her only chance to plan a wedding, conveniently forgetting my sister's future nuptials. My dad mostly stayed out of it, but would make occasional cutting remarks about how much everything cost. He implied multiple times that they shouldn't be expected to contribute financially since it was such a low-rent affair. Never mind that James and I were paying for everything ourselves and hadn't asked them for a dime. The final straw came last week. James and I had decided on a fairly small, intimate wedding of about 75 people. We wanted it to be meaningful rather than a big production. When I told my mom the final guest count, she flipped out. She started ranting about how embarrassing it would be to have such a cheap wedding and how people would think our family was poor. She brought up Anna's lavish 300-person wedding and Olivia's plans for a destination ceremony in Hawaii, implying that my humble plans were somehow shaming the family. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the money, we just wanted something low-key that reflected our values and relationship. She wasn't having it. She threatened to tell all our relatives that the reason for the small wedding was because James and I were having financial troubles. I was stunned that she would try to spread lies and potentially damage James' reputation. He has a great job in finance. When I confronted her about it, things escalated quickly. She called me ungrateful and said I was too stupid to plan a proper wedding. She brought up every perceived failure and disappointment from my past, twisting them to fit her narrative that I was an embarrassment to the family. My dad, who had been silent up to this point, chimed in that they were embarrassed to even be associated with such a pathetic event. He said maybe it was better if they didn't come at all, since they wouldn't want their friends to know this joke of a wedding was for their daughter. I was reeling from their verbal assault when my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. I hoped maybe she would offer some support, but instead she just told me I should give in to Mom's demands to keep the peace. She said I was being selfish and immature by insisting on doing things my way. In that moment, years of emotional abuse and neglect came flooding back. I realized that nothing was ever going to change with them. No matter what I did, I would never be good enough in their eyes. I was tired of diminishing myself to fit their narrow view of what I should be. With shaking hands but a steady voice, I told them they were no longer invited to the wedding and that I was cutting off contact. The shock on their faces almost made me waver, but I stood my ground. I said I was done being the family punching bag and that I deserved better. Then I hung up and blocked their numbers. They've been trying to reach me through every possible avenue since then, calling my work, messaging my friends, even contacting James' family. They alternate between angry tirades about my betrayal and manipulative texts trying to guilt me into changing my mind. But with each attempt, I become more certain that I made the right choice. James has been incredibly supportive through all of this. He says he's proud of me for standing up for myself and that I shouldn't feel guilty for prioritizing my mental health. My closest friends have rallied around me too, offering encouragement and practical help with wedding planning. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't have moments of doubt. There's still that little girl inside me who desperately wants her parents' love and approval. I worry about regretting this decision down the line, or about depriving our future children of grandparents. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting or if I should try one more time to reconcile for the sake of family. So Reddit, Ida for cutting off my family and uninviting them from my wedding. Should I stick to my guns or try to salvage the relationship somehow? I could really use some outside perspectives on this whole mess. Update 1. Thank you all for the supportive comments and messages on my original post. It really helped validate my decision to cut contact with my family. I wanted to give an update on what's happened in the months since then. In the days following our big fight, my parents continued trying to contact me incessantly. They left countless voicemails ranging from tearful apologies to angry threats. When I didn't respond, they started reaching out to my friends, coworkers, and even my boss trying to get messages to me. It was embarrassing and stressful having to explain the situation to people. My boss was understanding but warned me not to let it affect my work. A few coworkers I'm not close with have been giving me strange looks, and I worry about what my parents might have told them. The worst part was when they showed up unannounced at my apartment 2 weeks ago. I was thankfully out running errands, but my neighbor texted me that my parents were banging on my door and yelling. I was scared to go home, so I went to James' place instead. I ended up calling the police to have them removed, which felt awful but necessary. They left before the cops arrived, but it rattled me knowing they would go to such lengths. I was starting to worry they might try to crash the wedding, so James and I decided to change our plans. We moved the ceremony to a different venue and didn't tell anyone the new location until the day before. We also hired security just in case. It was sad having to take these precautions for what should have been a happy day. The added stress took its toll on me. I had trouble sleeping and felt constantly on edge. There were days I could barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by anxiety and depression. James suggested I talk to a therapist, but I was resistant. I've always had a hard time opening up to people, and the thought of rehashing all this trauma with a stranger was daunting. Instead, I threw myself into wedding planning as a distraction. Despite the drama, the wedding itself was beautiful and drama-free. Being surrounded by people who genuinely love and support us was incredible. My aunt, Mom's sister, attended and walked me down the aisle. She's always been the black sheep of the family too, so we've grown closer in recent years. It meant so much to have her there. She pulled me aside at the reception and apologized for not intervening more when I was young. She said she always saw how unfairly I was treated but was too afraid of rocking the boat to say anything. She promised to be there for me going forward and said she was proud of me for breaking the cycle of abuse. It was a bittersweet moment, healing to hear those words, but painful to be reminded of all I endured. The week after the wedding was blissful. James and I went on a short honeymoon to a nearby beach town. It was so relaxing to be away from all the stress and drama, just enjoying each other's company. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. But reality came crashing back as soon as we returned home. I had a lengthy email from my sister Anna waiting in my inbox. I was surprised since she'd been radio silent throughout this whole ordeal. Her message was full of gaslighting and guilt-tripping. She said I was tearing the family apart with my selfishness and that I needed to apologize to our parents. She accused me of being jealous of her success and said I was playing the victim to get attention. The kicker was when she revealed my parents had taken out a loan to pay for a huge wedding they were planning behind my back. Apparently they'd already booked a venue and invited 300+ people without telling me. Anna said I needed to go along with their plans or else they'd be in financial trouble. I was floored by the audacity. I spent hours drafting and redrafting a response, trying to find the right words to express my hurt and anger. I finally sent a lengthy email explaining exactly why I'd cut contact and that I had zero obligation to follow through on plans made without my knowledge or consent. I told her she was welcome to pay for the wedding herself if she was so concerned. She replied with a barrage of insults, calling me ungrateful and delusional. I blocked her email address after that. Olivia has been conspicuously absent through all of this. Last I heard, she was on some kind of spiritual retreat in Bali. Part of me is hurt that she hasn't reached out, but mostly I'm relieved not to have to deal with her drama on top of everything else. It's been hard grieving the loss of my family. Even though they were toxic, there's still that ingrained desire for parental love and approval. I've been working through a lot of complicated emotions. Some days I feel strong and certain in my decision. Other days I'm plagued by guilt and self-doubt. I'm trying to focus on building my chosen family of supportive friends. James has been my rock through all of this. His parents have been incredibly kind too, telling me I'm always welcome in their family. It helps, but doesn't completely fill the void. I've started looking into support groups for people estranged from toxic families. I'm not sure if I'm ready to share my story in person yet, but it helps knowing I'm not alone in this struggle. I'm also reconsidering James' suggestion of therapy. I know I have a lot to work through and it might be good to have professional help. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm trying to be gentle with myself and allow space for all the messy, complicated feelings. Thank you all again for the kindness and advice. It's made a world of difference knowing I have support, even if it's from internet strangers. Update 2. It's been about 6 months since my last update, and unfortunately the drama with my family has continued. I wanted to share what's been happening and get some advice. A few weeks ago, I ran into my sister Olivia at the grocery store. I was caught off guard. Last I'd heard she was still traveling abroad. It was awkward at first, but she seemed genuinely remorseful about everything that happened. We ended up getting coffee and talking for hours. Olivia admitted that she'd always felt guilty for not standing up for me more when we were younger. She said that after I cut contact, she started to see our family dynamic in a new light. She realized how toxic and manipulative our parents were and how she'd been complicit in their treatment of me. She told me she was trying to distance herself from them too. I was cautious, but it felt good to reconnect with my sister. We started texting regularly and met up a few times over the next couple weeks. She was interested in my life and seemed to really be listening when I shared my feelings. It felt like maybe I could have a relationship with at least one family member after all. But I should have known it was too good to be true. Last weekend, Olivia invited me over to her place for dinner. She said she wanted to cook me her famous lasagna and catch up more. When I arrived, I was ambushed by my parents and Anna. They had staged an intervention to try to force me to reconcile. For over an hour, they berated me and tried to wear me down. My mom cried about how I was killing her by cutting her out of my life. My dad accused James of turning me against them. Anna went on a long rant about family loyalty and how I was acting like an ungrateful brat. They said I was mentally ill for cutting them off and that I was ruining the family. I was so hurt and angry that Olivia had betrayed my trust like this. When I tried to leave, my dad physically blocked the door. I ended up having to threaten to call the police before they would let me go. I was shaking and crying by the time I got home. The next day, Olivia called to apologize. She said our parents had manipulated her into setting up the ambush by threatening to cut her off financially if she didn't help them. She claimed she didn't know they were planning to attack me like that. Part of me understands she was in a difficult position, but I'm having trouble forgiving this betrayal. To make matters worse, I found out my parents have been spreading vicious rumors about me and James to our extended family and family friends. They're telling people that James is abusive and has brainwashed me against them. They've even implied that he's isolating me and controlling my finances, painting themselves as concerned parents trying to save their daughter from an abusive relationship. A few relatives have reached out asking if I need help leaving my dangerous relationship. An aunt I was close to as a kid called in tears, begging me to let her help me escape. It's infuriating having to defend my marriage against these blatant lies. James is the kindest, most supportive partner I could ask for. The fact that they would stoop to such despicable tactics just shows how little they actually care about my well-being. I'm at a loss for what to do now. I thought I was finally moving on, but this has brought back all the pain and trauma. I'm considering getting a restraining order against my parents, but I'm worried that might escalate things further. Part of me just wants to move far away and change my name to escape all of this. James has been amazingly supportive as always. He's furious at my family for continually hurting me and wants me to take legal action. He's offered to hire a lawyer to send cease and desist letters about the defamation. I'm torn between wanting to stand up for myself and just wanting this all to be over. I've started seeing a therapist to help process everything. It's been difficult dredging up old wounds, but I know it's necessary for healing. She's helped me work through some of the guilt and self-doubt I've been struggling with. Still, I have a long way to go. For now, I'm focusing on self-care and leaning on my support system. I'm throwing myself into work and hobbies as a distraction. James and I are planning a trip abroad next month to get away from everything for a while. I'm hoping the distance and change of scenery will give me some perspective. Any advice on how to proceed would be really appreciated. Should I take legal action? Try to clear my name with extended family? Or just focus on moving forward and healing? I'm feeling lost and could use some guidance. Update 3. It's been a challenging few months since my last update, but I'm cautiously optimistic that things are improving. I want to thank everyone again for all the support and advice. After a lot of careful consideration, I've decided to take legal action against my parents. I met with a lawyer who specializes in cases of stalking and harassment. She helped me file for a restraining order against my parents and Anna. We also sent cease and desist letters demanding they stop spreading false rumors about me and James. The lawyer warned me that this might escalate things in the short term, but assured me it was the best way to establish firm boundaries and protect ourselves. To my surprise, the judge granted the restraining order pretty quickly. My parents and Anna are now legally prohibited from contacting me or coming near my home or workplace. It's a huge relief knowing I have some legal protection now. Of course, a piece of paper won't stop them entirely if they're determined, but it gives us recourse if they violate it. The aftermath of filing the restraining order has been intense. My parents sent a barrage of emails, which my lawyer advised me not to respond to, alternating between rage and attempts at manipulation. They threatened to contest the order, but so far haven't followed through. Extended family members have been reaching out, some supportive and others critical of my decision. It's been exhausting having to explain and defend myself constantly. As for Olivia, I've decided to keep her at arm's length for now. She sent several apologetic messages, claiming she wants to make amends. But I'm not ready to trust her again after the ambush incident. I told her I need space and time to heal before considering any kind of relationship. She seemed to accept that, though I worry she might be reporting back to our parents. In happier news, James and I found out I'm pregnant. I'm about 12 weeks along and we're over the moon excited. Of course, this has brought up some complicated emotions about family. I'm thrilled to be starting our own family, but sad that our child won't have loving grandparents in their life. I'm determined to break the cycle of abuse and be the kind of loving, supportive parent I never had. My aunt, the one who walked me down the aisle, has been amazing through all of this. She's thrilled to be a great aunt and has offered to help in any way she can. It means so much to have at least one supportive family member in my life. She's become a surrogate mother figure in many ways, offering the unconditional love and support I always craved from my own mom. Work has been a welcome distraction from all the family drama. I recently got a promotion to senior marketing manager, which has been both exciting and challenging. The added responsibilities keep me busy, but I'm loving the creative aspects of the role. James and I are starting to look at houses, thinking we might want more space before the baby comes. I'm still working through a lot in therapy. Some days are harder than others. I still have moments of doubt and guilt, wondering if I'm doing the right thing by keeping my parents out of my life and their grandchild's life. But then I remember all the pain they've caused and know I'm protecting myself and my growing family. For now, I'm trying to focus on the positives in my life, my loving husband, our baby on the way, supportive friends, a fulfilling career. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future for the first time in a long while. Thank you all again for helping me find the strength to stand up for myself and create healthier boundaries.